Hey guys, forgive the weird angle. I am currently holding my iPad. Um, so today begins the vlog for two book told books. The first one being A Guide to the Dark by Mariam Mitui, I want to say. All I know about it is it's young adult queer horror. Now, young adult horror I have had some success with in the past, so hoping everything goes good with this. So I'm going to vlog the experience and also for the third daughter. So yeah, I'm literally just going to jump straight into it and I'll see you guys in a bit. So I'm now 10% into A Guide to the Dark. The only way I can describe the premise is if you've seen 1408, the movie, Stephen King movie. Very similar premise. You've got a motel with a haunted, possessed room that's apparently killed a lot of people. So we have these two friends, Mira and Layla, whose car breaks down, and they end up staying at the motel. And initially they're told they're full, there's no room, but the owner, Elena, eventually convinces her son Ellis to put the girls in room 9, which is the haunted room. And immediately the first night, Mira begins to have strange dreams and see strange things, focusing mainly around her brother Khalil's death. But Layla doesn't seem affected by anything. She, in fact, thinks the hotel is charming. So I have a feeling that this room plays on your fears and things you've gone through in your life. And being as Layla's already clearly stated, she has no experience with death. She has loving parents, and you know, there's nothing remotely wrong with her life. The room can't affect her. That might be the case. Obviously it's still very early days, so I'm excited to see where it goes and see how we get you know, that horror scare factor that plays in. We already know where the queer element comes in. It comes in with Layla, who is more than a little bit in love with her best friend Mira. But she hasn't told Mira, and Mira doesn't know. Nobody knows. So we've already got the queer element in there. But yeah, the audiobook for this one isn't very long. I got 3 hours on it. Obviously I got down to 2 hours on my screen time reading yesterday, and then I added on today's lot, which was close to 8 hours. So I am now at 10 hours of screen time. Obviously I'm not going to be able to read for 10 hours a day, but like yesterday, I will roll over anytime. So yeah, I'm going to jump straight back into it, and I'll update you pretty soon. So I'm now about a quarter of the way through A Guide to the Dark. It's okay so far. There have been some creepy goings on, you know, an ominous feeling in the hotel room, and Mira is seeing things. She's seeing her dead brother pop up in this room on her bed and in the shower, but Layla is not experiencing any of this. The only strange thing Layla is experiencing is when she's taking pictures of Mira. The pictures warp towards Mira, but it doesn't happen with anyone else she takes pictures of. So it seems that the room is attached to Mira, not to Layla. But apart from that, nothing's really happening too much. Mira's made friends with Alice, whose mum owns the hotel, and Mira's kind of learnt from the mechanic that strange things have happened in the hotel, but he wasn't specific. And when Layla asks Alice about it, he says, like, if you ask around town, they'll tell you that my mum killed my dad. And I think there's more to it. Obviously, we get these almost interlude chapters that aren't from Mira or from Layla, but talk about the hotel and the paranormal things that are happening. So that's interesting, but there's nothing too creepy yet. Like, so far I would label it as mild paranormal, not horror, so unless that kind of those elements pick up soon, you know. But I did enjoy the pictures that are in here, because obviously Layla is a photographer, and she talks about a lot of these photos. We actually do get to see them, which gives a nice effect, and it allows you to see what the characters look like, which I really appreciated. So yeah, I'm gonna get back into this and I'll give you an update in a bit. I'm 35% of the way through A Guide to the Dark now. And I thought we were just going to focus mainly on like Layla and Mira, but actually Alice has come into the story quite a lot, purely because Layla and Mira have a fight, because obviously Layla is in love with Mira, and Mira is aware of these feelings, but she knows, because Layla comes from quite a strict Arab household, that she wouldn't be accepted if she came out as gay, and she can't even tell her parents about her choice of degree at university. She wants to major in photography, and she wants to go out of state to do it, but her parents are quite protective of her, and they want her to stay close to home and do something productive that isn't photography. So she knows that Layla is never going to openly express her feelings for Mira. So she ends up going to talk to Alice, because obviously Alice's father died. He committed suicide. So he understands the kind of grief that Mira is going through, and she opens up to him about Khalil. And it's at that point Alice explains to her that he genuinely believes that there's something wrong with room 9, but no one believes him. You know, and he shows her his research he's done, and you know, Mira has to bring Layla into this. So the three of them kind of look at the people that have died in that room. There's been 8 in total that they know of. And he's been doing research into them, trying to find out what the connection is between them. Like, why did these people die? But so far he hasn't found anything from age to occupation to how long they stayed in the room. But he notices something odd about the deaths. Like, 2 people have slipped and fallen in the bathroom. 2 have committed suicide. 1 died in his sleep despite only being 73. And another one drowned in the pool despite it only being 5 feet at its deepest. And through the interlude chapters, we get introduced to something called the pull. And this seems to be the entity in the room. It's only called the pull, but it kind of latches on to certain people when they come in the room, and it seems to be to do with their emotions. Like, in one of these chapters, the entity's talking about how since Mira spoke to Ellis, and she's now fully aware that there is something in that room, she's subconsciously pushing back against it. And it says about Layla and how none of her emotions would satisfy it. So it seems like an entity that feeds off negative emotions, but not just anger. These have to be really strong emotions. So I'm thinking depression, grief, and things like that, which would make sense. Dread, things like that. And it makes sense since there's been 2 suicides, so maybe it played on their depression and made it worse. Obviously, we know Mira, struggling with grief, has been able to feel it from the second she stepped into the room. So I think that is going to be the key. It's going to come down to what were these people who died feeling when they entered the room. So there's that. I'm definitely going to be able to finish it today. It's only 4:30 and I'm already 35% of the way through it. So I'm hoping today I'll be able to finish A Guide to the Dark and start The Third Daughter. So that's my plan for now, and I will update you again at the halfway mark. It's now 6:20. I have just crossed the halfway mark in A Guide to the Dark. Still nothing really horror-ish is happening. There's some creepy stuff going on. Mira's still questioning whether she's going a bit nuts or whether there is actually something going on. They do this experiment where they're going to stay up all night and see if Layla can confirm what Mira is seeing. And in the end, they decide to make use of modern technology and use Layla's camera. And there is a bit where Mira thinks she can hear Khalil's voice coming from the TV, underneath the static, and Layla can't hear it. And even when they play it back on the video, Ellis can't hear it, and neither can Mira when it's played back. But they do see someone breaks into their room, and Layla's 100% sure it's the same guy they saw earlier in the day trying to go into their room, who happens to be a guy that Mira bumped into while jogging. And as Layla looks back through all the photos she's taken, this guy keeps appearing in every picture. So I'm starting to question now, is it not paranormal? And that the horror is going to be more of a serial killer thing, where this person frequently visits the motel over the years and kills whoever is in room 9. I do not know, but then that would kind of invalidate the interlude chapters about the poll, because that seems really paranormal. So at this point I'm just really confused. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go cook some food and eat, and then get back into reading and try and figure out what's going on. And I'll update you in a bit. So quick update, I went and had food and everything, and I'm now 65% of the way through A Guide to the Dark. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It is going to be paranormal horror, not serial killer horror, which I'm happy with, but they've now met another person tied to the room in Devlin. Devlin is the man that broke into the room, but he did it because his wife, Madeline, stayed in room 9 after the death of their son. She didn't die in the room, she left. She had weird experiences there, but when she left, it got even worse, to the point where he had to institutionalize her, and he's looking for just answers, like Ellis. So, those four, along with Izzy, begin researching the guests that stayed in room 9 that didn't die in there. And they actually found a lot of these people died in freak accidents, suicides, just a lot of things. A lot of them ended up institutionalized, and Mira is beginning to understand that the room's influence does not end when they leave the motel. It stays with them, which makes her worried, being as she's seeing her brother a lot now, and she's having not just hallucinations, but she's feeling things. She has the sleep paralysis, and the room is actually exerting influence over Layla. She doesn't feel it the same way Mira is, but the room influences her to say things to antagonize Mira and frighten Mira, and Layla has no idea what's happening. But Mira's made a connection about the photo warping that seems to be happening around her. She notices she can see it in glass and in mirrors as well, and it seems almost like a living thing hanging on to her, and it kind of reaches out towards Devlin and Ellis, but it completely avoids Layla and Izzy. And when you think about it, the only thing Mira, Ellis and Devlin have in common is the death of a loved one. Devlin's son, Ellis's father, Mira's brother. So it seems, my theory is, the room latches on to people who are grieving and feeds off that energy and their fear. So they've got some ideas now and they're running with it. Mira is making more connections, but she hasn't spoken about them yet. So I'm excited to see where the last couple of sections of the book go. So I will update you now at 80%, and then obviously I'll give you my final thoughts when I'm done. So I'll check back in a bit. So I'm 80% of the way through A Guide to the Dark, and they've now made the connection that the room's power or people the room attaches itself to are those that have dealt intimately with death, grief, and all those feelings come with it. Yeah, So we know all that. One thing, I still think they're missing one piece of the puzzle, because Elena, Alice's mum, obviously has dealt with the death of her husband, but she isn't affected the same way Alice, Devlin, and Mira are, and she's not affected by the war paint either. And I think this comes down to something Izzy said about Elena forgiving herself for not noticing those signs in her husband. And I think that forgiving yourself, absolving yourself of that guilt, stops the room from being able to get hold of you. Alice obviously hasn't been inside the room, but the room still has a little bit of sway over him. It mainly affects Devlin and Mira more. So yeah, we still don't know what it is or what they're gonna do about it. But you know, we've got a good sense of how the room operates and why it chooses certain people. So yeah, we've got a sense of it. I don't know how it's going to end, because even though there has been some creepy stuff happening, it's mainly been in the form of like hallucinations and things like that. I would not label this as horror. Like, even if someone dies in this last 70, 80 pages, I would not classify this as horror. Not even like psychological horror, because it's few and far between and it's nothing really overt about it. It's very subliminal, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think the categorization of horror is wrong. I would call it a paranormal thriller, maybe. So I don't know. I think at the minute, it's going to be sitting about a 3.25 for me, but that could change depending on the ending. So I'm going to read those last few pages and get back to you on my final thoughts. So I finished A Guide to the Dark. Yeah, I didn't like. I enjoyed the easy writing and the cool characters and you know, the 1408 premise, but and like hearing from the room itself or the entity possessing the room, it's still very unclear on what it is. But yeah, I really didn't like the way it ended. This is going to be a 3-star from me. You know, it was good. It had some cool concept, had some great representation with Arab characters and a lot of queer characters. But in terms of the story, there's 100 different books out there that do it better. So really not recommended in terms of like thrills and scares, because even though it's labelled as horror, there's none of that. Apart from like the past 10 pages, but that doesn't make up for there being virtually nothing really scary or thrilling throughout the book. So, you know, a book that takes a similar concept and does it better would be like Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Still not great, but better than this. And obviously, I can't remember the name of the short story that the movie's bit off, but 1408 by Stephen King. A lot better, way more horror, way more scary, a lot more thrills. For, you know, 80% of this book, it's a contemporary romance. You know, there's a lot of Layla pining for Mira and Mira pining for Layla, and not. Yeah. So I wouldn't label it as a horror. It's not scary or thrilling in any way, but it has a cool concept. And if you did like 1408 by Stephen King, you know, the movie, book version, whatever, then it might be worth the read, but it was very lackluster and really disappointing for me. So, the other book I have to read for Blog Talk is The Third Daughter by Adrienne Tooley. So I'm probably going to start that now, being it's only like 9 o'clock. And then in terms of my screen time for read time, I added on 8 hours today, and I'm down to 7 hours and 5 minutes. I'll probably knock a couple more hours off that today. So yeah, disappointing, but I have read some really good books this month, so it was expected. So yeah, I'm gonna finish up my review and get that posted, and then I'll probably make a start on The Third Daughter, and I'll check back with you a bit later.